I just want to go back to the TikTok thing. I want to make 3 points. One is from the past. I'll give you my sense of the TikTok thing, and I'm going to make a prediction for the future. In 1984, the way that LVMH began was through a deal that Bernard Arnault architected. There was a business owned by the French cotton king, Marcel Boussac, and inside of that empire was Christian Dior. Long story short, his empire was crumbling, and Arnault did a deal where he bought that dying business essentially from the French government for 1 franc. Fast forward now, 40 years of very hard work and tremendous execution, that's a $350 billion public company. Now, imagine back then in 1984, if the French government actually had done a deal where they said, we'll sell it to you for 50% of whatever you build. Take it for $1, but we're going to own 50% of the upside. And, they would have an extra $175 billion today. I think that that's very important in terms of what is possible today. I like Thomas's math. I believe it. I do think it's about a $100 billion asset. But at the end of the day, the president was very clear that it is completely and entirely worthless without his permit. And he wants to own 50% of this asset. Now, if you're a buyer of something, you're not going to pay $100 billion if you control whether it can exist or not. You're basically going to pay today's equivalent of 1 franc, which would be $1. Now, I'm not saying that it is going to be $1, but if the United States Treasury wants to hold 50% of an asset that could be worth $100 billion or $500 billion or maybe $1 trillion, it would make sense for the United States Treasury and the United States people to own that at effectively zero. So I think that the incentive is there, and I think he has essentially said that he is going to do the best deal in his interests, which is the United States interests, which I suspect means a price that is as low as possible, approaching $1.
And ultimately, won't this be the Chinese government's decision? Because they could always say, you know what? Let it die.
Maybe. But my point is, it may not be $1. Maybe it could be 25 billion. Maybe it could be 10 billion. But my point is, I find it very hard to see how it gets to the actual value that it is today. So then I think, let me just make a prediction for the future. There's a question that this raises, which is, does it make sense for the American government to be a little bit smarter going forward about how it allocates incentives and resources?